Hegemony and Socialist Strategy by Ernesto Laclau and Chantal Mouffe was published in 1985. It is a very important work of political theory. Laclau and Mouffe describe themselves as post-Marxists. They seek to disengage the idea of hegemony from its orthodox Marxist ground and reconstitute it as the key concept of a radical democratic politics. In this book, they situate their theoretical intervention in what they see as a historical crisis of socialism. They are also responding to the emergence of a plurality of new forms of social conflict and the so-called social movements. According to the authors, the classic dichotomy between the mental and physical realms is not valid, and therefore the theory is rejected by the argument that mental phenomena are restricted by the material universe. They refute any distinction between discursive and non-discursive practices, referring to the mistaken assumption of the mental character of discourse. They affirm the material character of every discursive structure. The book has 4 chapters. The first chapter, Hegemony, the Genealogy of a Concept, locates the author's view of hegemony in the intellectual crisis of classical Marxism. Laclau and Mouffe develop Perry Anderson's idea that the cultural and philosophical preoccupations of Western Marxism were the result of its major intellectuals' distance from the working class movement. They developed this argument in discursive terms rather than biographical terms to examine the logic of Marxist explanatory model. They review 3 responses to the crisis of classical Marxism, which they respectively term the formation of Marxist orthodoxy, revisionism, and revolutionary syndicalism. In Rosa Luxemburg's spontaneism, they see an anticipation of their own thesis that the working class is symbolically constituted and does not exist as an objective entity prior to its collective self-definition through mobilization. Kautsky and Plekhanov rigidify the idea of objectively existing classes and the laws of their development and seek to impose dogmatic theoretical closure on an already empirically unsound structure. The autonomy of the political from the economic is the true novelty of Bernstein's argument. He is seen as a theorist of mature capitalism with its growing intermediate strata, stronger state, and internally stratified working class. Laclau and Mouffe see Sorel as a forerunner of their own radical voluntarist position. What attracts them about Sorel is the radicalism with which he accepts the consequences of the crisis of Marxism. The second chapter traces the development of the concept of hegemony in the Leninist tradition and in Gramsci's work. The authors aim to demonstrate that the element of indeterminacy introduced into Marxist discourse by the idea of political and hegemonic practice is inconsistent with any idea of economic or structural determinacy. They argue that what was originally adopted as a supplement to classical Marxism logically leads to its suppression. Here the authors announce and demonstrate their post-Marxism. In the third chapter, the authors formulate their own non-essentialist idea of hegemony. The concept of suture is crucial to their argument here. The metaphor is borrowed from Lacanian psychoanalysis. It refers to the functions of the symbolic and imagery, and also incompletely filling in for the desire for loss or absence of the other. Laclau and Mouffe extend this idea to the domain of politics. In the final chapter, the authors seek to redefine the socialist project. They offer a summary but crucial reinterpretation of radical history. The major watershed for them is not the emergence of class relations, but democratic revolution, initially the struggle of the people against the ancient regime. The idea of democratic revolution as the core of a subversive discourse is crucial to the argument. Relations of subordination only become defined as oppression and thus capable of construction as social antagonism through articulatory practice. The new social movements emerge as forms of resistance to dispersed and plural kinds of subordination. Autonomy, difference, and liberty become increasingly salient positive values in this more plural climate. In contemporary society, there is thus both an extended conception of rights and legitimate claims and a more extensive commodification and bureaucratization of life. This double movement produces the site of many struggles. The authors set out their proposal for a left alternative on this reading of the democratic idea. They characterize the alternative as the construction of a different system of equivalence which establishes social division on a new basis. The task of the left, therefore, cannot be renounce liberal democratic ideology, but on the contrary, to deepen and expand it in the direction of radical and plural democracy. Radical democracy is chosen above other political projects because, in Laclau and Mouffe's interpretation, it distinctively depends on affirmation of the contingency and ambiguity of every essence and on the constitutive nature of social division and antagonism.